This happened a few years ago, after a rehearsal dinner for a friend's wedding. The dinner was held at a little lodge, basically a metal shed, in the middle of nowhere Midwest. There was nothing but fields for miles in all directions. This lodge was about 15 miles away from the motel we were all staying at, so we all tried our best to stay sober enough to drive back. The guy I was rooming with had one too many, and was told he couldn't drive his car back, but being a drunk a-hole, he just slipped outside and took off in his car around 11 p.m. About 30 minutes later, I head back to the motel room, expecting to find my roomie already sleeping. Instead, the motel room is empty. I didn't really think much about it. I figured he had found one of the local watering holes and was having some late-night fun, so I went to sleep. Around 3 a.m., I get woken up to him finally walking in. I'm ready to give him some hell about drinking so much the night before our buddy's wedding, but I stop when I see him. His face was white. He had obviously been crying, and he was shaking like a leaf. I immediately asked him what's wrong. After he had left the lodge, he had taken a few wrong turns and had gotten lost down some old gravel roads. He realized it had been a mistake for him to try to drive in his drunken state, so he decides to try to find some place to pull off and sleep for an hour or two. After driving for a while, he saw a patch of trees in the distance with a gravel driveway leading up to it. He pulls into the driveway and sees that the patch of trees has a grown-over foundation in the middle of it. He figures this would be a good place to rest, so he turns his car off and closes his eyes. He wasn't sure how long he was asleep when he was woken up to a loud tapping on the driver's side window. He jumped to attention, looked over, and saw a woman in her mid-40s wearing a nightgown, leaning over looking in his window. He thought that this woman must have been driving by and stopped to make sure he was okay. So he rolled down his window to explain his situation, hoping that she wouldn't call the cops. Before he could say anything, though, the woman leaned through the open window, getting so close to his face, he could feel her lips on his cheek, and she whispers, "Please, leave." She then stood up and started walking down the driveway toward the old foundation. He didn't think twice. He started his car and reversed out of the driveway. As he was pulling onto the road, he looked back down the driveway. Where the old foundation had been just seconds before, there was now a small farmhouse. The windows were broken. The exterior was bare wood, as if the paint had long worn off, and the roof sagged in the middle. As he tried to wrap his mind around what he was seeing, he noticed that staring at him out of a window on the second floor was the woman who had just spoken to him. He put his car in drive and floored it down random gravel roads, scared out of his mind, until he found the highway and made it back to the motel. He left for home the next morning. I had to explain to our friends why one of the groomsmen had to leave. I just told everyone he had caught a bad flu. We don't ever talk about what happened that night.